Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to the View Up Here Global Edition. I'm your host, Canadian Glenn, and it is October 17th, 2018. Tonight, a flashback show, a full table of guests. But tonight, corporate censorship with government approval equals Fascism. Freedom, the most bastardized, noble word there is. In the 21st century, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to government? What does it mean to corporations and institutional investors like pension funds and hedge funds? The United States, with cultural dominance over much of the globe, has sold a version of freedom that implies the individual is protected from the overreach of the state. Don't worry, citizens, your rights to expression are above the state. By the way, we have also de facto granted that right to multinational corporations and any other corporate entity that is involved in the revolving door command structure policy with the state. When it comes to which group takes priority when they go against each other, look no further than social media. Last week, Facebook and Twitter conducted another purge of what they consider counterproductive to their mission, which is profitability and control. Over the last 40 years, freedom has been measured as the freedom to consume. Now citizens are increasingly being told what they can consume by diktats. Over 800 pages and accounts on Facebook alone, massive archives of content, and millions of followers don't seem to matter against the freedom of the corporations supported by the state. That is indeed the textbook definition of fascism. So, with us here tonight, I'll go through who I know is here already. Patti Beers, an Occupy Wall Street veteran, live streamer, indie journalist, very trusted source that has had her platforms taken away. You can say hi, Patti.
Hey now.
All right, we'll keep going. We have Vlad Teichberg, and with him, Nikki, his wife. Vlad is a OWS veteran and a Occupy Wall Street veteran, but kind of crossed the line there, came on over, is the co-founder from GlobalRevLive. Good evening, Vlad.
Hi, and I was going to introduce Nikki. Me and Nikki were also co-organizers of 15am Media Center in Madrid. Similar roles to what we played during OWS.
Hello.
Good evening. Joe Fionda, actor, producer, indie journalist, live streamer. We were discussing before the show, it's been about 3 years at least since we've been on air together, Joe. Good evening.
Good evening, Glenn. Glad to hear from you again.
Indeed. Well, I laid out what the background picture is, where this road seems to be heading. Vlad, Nikki, Dan will be joining us shortly. GlobalRevLive went down. Patti, you also had connections with them. Why don't you guys explain how it looked to you and I'll see who else is here with the callers I haven't identified with.
Who wants to
Take
start?
it away.
Patti,
Either you,
go
Vlad, or
Yeah, we don't have
Patti,
time to
go
start.
first because Patti was part of NZ Media and GlobalRev, and both of those groups got banned.
Okay. Hey now, I'm Patti Beers, known as Patti Beers on the internet. I'm kind of in the middle of this whole everything, and I kind of wonder if it's my fault, kind of. Well, not really my fault, but like because of my connection with anti-media, I guess I should back up. So I've been working as a social media manager for Twitter for anti-media since 2014. And I've also been involved with the Global Revolution Media Collective since probably 2012. I did a lot of live streaming of protests during starting out from Occupy and then like continuing on till now even. So I covered a lot of police brutality, a lot of LAPD corruption, police commission meetings. I do a lot with Black Lives Matter. And White People for Black Lives is actually one of the Twitter accounts that I had access to that on Thursday, I'm going all over the place, I'm so sorry. So what happened on Thursday, October 11th was in the morning there was 800 Facebook pages that got taken off of Facebook. And then in the afternoon, people started messaging me. I was at work. And people started messaging me telling me I lost all of my Twitter accounts. And I had access to about over 30 Twitter accounts. I don't remember how many were on the GlobalRev tweet deck. It was a lot at one point, and I think all of those got suspended too. But on my own tweet deck, I had 26 accounts. And there was one account that I haven't used in over a year or two, and that account is fine. It's not mine. It's an account that for someone I did work for. I tweeted for money for them, but I stopped doing that a couple years ago, and I haven't used that account. So that's the one account that didn't get suspended. But all of my accounts, my friends' accounts that I was retweeting for them, my business account for anti-media, which was my job, and 30. So 26. There were 26 on my tweet deck, my personal tweet deck, and 25 of those accounts got suspended. And then everything on the GlobalRev tweet deck, which I also have access to, all of those accounts, even accounts that haven't been on there for over 9 months, those accounts all got suspended too. And then I'm hearing other accounts that I've never even heard of are getting suspended for probably the same reasons. And also the people from Anti-Media, the editor-in-chief of Anti-Media, Carrie Wedler, her account, which she rarely ever used, was suspended. The guy who does the memes for Anti-Media, SM Gibson, his account was also suspended. Other Anti-Media accounts, Anti-Media UK and like one other account, those got suspended. And they have a new Twitter account today, Anti-Media News, if people want to follow that. What did I forget?
back her up, Vlad.
Hi, sorry, I was unmuting. I was looking for the unmute button. So for us, it was kind of similar. Suddenly people started talking, oh my God, GlobalRevLive is suspended, GlobalRevLive is suspended. We've been suspended before, I think back in December of last year. I think it was a trial run. And they put us back right away. Apologies, said, oh, sorry, computer malfunction, or something like that. And because we appealed, and right away they put us back. So we weren't too concerned, but people started saying, all right, who tweeted what? So we suspended, so we can't even see the account at first, but then we realized if you log into Twitter, you can still see what was posted. We're looking through the feed. There's not that much there. I mean, GlobalRev was relatively quiet, maybe putting out like 20, 30 tweets a day for the last month or so. Because sometimes when things get very intense, we actually put out a lot of tweets, like maybe 100 tweets a day type thing. but nothing really stuck out as deserving to be banned. And then suddenly I realized my personal Twitter account was gone because I tried to log in with my personal Twitter account just to look at what's going on Twitter in general. And then we started hearing stories of other accounts being banned, and they weren't even. We didn't even know about anti-media until a few hours later. We noticed that a lot of collectives on the internet, on Twitter, which were doing various kinds of news, like You're Non-Global, You're Non-Central, was suddenly gone. And at one point, You're Non-Global was actually in our tweet deck like a year ago, until that first series of bans where they decided not to participate anymore. And we were like, okay, that's interesting. And then we realized that all of the accounts that were in the tweet deck a year ago, not the ones that were in the tweet deck now, but a year ago, they were all banned. So they were going up, me and my wife. But anyway, so that's kind of interesting because 4 days before this whole ban started, I started publishing on Twitter like the history basically of how we basically me and my wife started having serious problems with the government about 2 years ago. Not before, but just 2 years ago, they put us in the terrorist watch list. They basically declared us, I don't know, terrorists, media terrorists, I don't know what. Canceled Nikki's visa. She's Spanish. So they said, you can't come to the United States anymore. I'm an American citizen, so they just started harassing me at the border. Every time I would fly, they would detain me for hours, interrogate me, and so on. And then this was going on for a while. I was going back and forth every month. And then I started doing FOIA requests to find out what's going on. And then FBI was like, well, you're on investigation, so we're not going to give you information because giving you any information could interfere with enforcement action. Now, if people know me, I mean, yes, like for people who hear me, it's like, oh my God, this guy's some violent person or something. I'm not. I've never advocated violence.
Me neither.
Neither is my wife. Neither is Nikki. Yeah, exactly. And we've always been, I mean, basically my crime is the fact that I've always been promoting for the last, 20 years, the idea that all people are equal, the idea of global equality. And I guess now that's equivalent to being a terrorist. Anyway, so during these interrogations, they were always questioning me. They did question me about how we use social media and so on. And I told them, yeah, we have a tweet deck, and it's basically a collaboration of people working together to tell news. And it's like a cross-diffusion agreement with different collectives working together, and we cross-diffuse each other's information, which is kind of how it probably was meant to be used to begin with. And the most important thing about it is we're not some kind of a robot network. It's a lot of human beings working together. In fact, we made very conscious decisions never to really automate any of our work, because once you automate it, it loses its soul. And communication, I think, requires soul. And so there is that. So we thought, okay, I started publishing all this information about what happened because I started filming my detentions. So I got all these tapes, and then these tapes started contradicting the stuff we started getting from FOIA, from Border Patrol. Well, anyway, I started publishing that 4 days before the ban hammer struck. So while Patti thinks she's a source of all troubles for everyone, we could also be part of the source of the troubles, at least for Global Rev, in the sense that maybe they didn't want us to tell the story. I don't know. So anyway, so that's basically our side of the story. This is how we found out what's happening.
Well, that's interesting. Now, we're still on Global Rev. I'm going to bring on Dan Feidt, web developer, indie journalist, and admin, and as well, Robert, you're on now too. You can introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, this is Dan Feidt. I'm a web developer and a journalist. I live in Boston. I had worked with some of the folks involved in Global Rev before Occupy Wall Street started. It goes back basically a decade from now. And so I still remember when we kind of thought up this account. I remember walking around and thinking how I should spell it out, how I should kind of make it something short that's punchy. It's still pretty bold in my mind. And so that was 2011. And so late last week, I get this email that says it's suspended, but it doesn't specify any reason. Like, it just sort of says, oh, this is suspended for reason, nothing. And it did get suspended in 2017 in December, but, I just sent an appeal, and a day later it got unsuspended, and it wasn't a problem. So I think it's tough. I think that these big companies, Facebook, Twitter, every day we're finding out more about how they mistreat publishers, how they don't really have any, operationalized core values about creating viable spaces for publishers. So, it's a frustrating experience, but it's also not that surprising in a lot of ways. So I'm just really glad that we could, have some time here to sort of talk about this and sort of, I think I just want to add, like, I think in the long run, I think it's important for people to think about how they can publish stuff themselves. And as a web developer, I think about that a lot. And so I think that, like, over the long run, like, this handful of Silicon Valley companies, like, they aren't going to respect publishers. They're kind of against the idea of publishers making money while they take all the money for themselves. And I do think there are positive alternatives. So I do want to stress that. I don't feel like we're at the end of the road. I think that, like, there's a lot of different creative things that can carry digital publishing through the 21st century, but counting on Facebook and Twitter is not going to do it. Like, it's just not going to work. So I think that if we step back for a second, we can have a long-range vision for publishing because as I say, the internet interprets censorship as damage and will help you route around it if you work at it.
Robert?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Robert Brune. I've been with GlobalRevLive since the beginning of Occupy, September 2011. My role was pretty much networking and reporting from the ground in mostly D.C. and later on in Baltimore. What I wanted to add to this conversation is over the past 6 months, I've seen Kirsten Nielsen, the chief of the Homeland Security, and representatives of the FBI go on mainstream media news talking about how they're going to get out in front of weaponized information, and that's just not what we do at Global Rev. We're, very strictly nonpartisan truth tellers, and I was concerned that we might get swept up in this somehow. The closest thing we came to being involved haphazardly is 2016. We were tweeting out WikiLeaks stuff, but we got out ahead of that way before the mainstream media. We realized that the Russians were involved, and we curtailed. I think we mostly stopped retweeting anything from Julian Assange and WikiLeaks right around by that early fall. So, yeah, this is surprising, but not surprising.
Well, see, there you say you took a proactive decision. So again, there's more proof this is not an automated platform, Global Rev. Now, Dan, you mentioned alternate publishing methods other than these monoliths that have grown, Twitter, Facebook. Joe, I bet you've got a little bit to say about that. Alternate methods? Let's hear it.
We relied a lot on Twitter for what we were doing, but it wasn't just tweeting stories. We were boots on the ground, networking with people across the United States and Europe and Canada, and even in Turkey and Syria. Trying to get news out from on the ground from citizen journalists there. It was basically we were running a global news agency, and where a lot of news agencies, your traditional mainstream media, refused to go, we were able to make connections with people that I felt like what we had done in the past 7 years was indeed revolutionary. And we've broken stories that like have absolutely shocked the world. We were involved with Ferguson. We were involved with publicizing the lead up to Baltimore. Rob could probably tell you a little bit better about that. Also, Walter Scott in South Carolina, and on the ground in Gezi Park in Istanbul, and even like we have contacts, media contacts in Syria that simply disprove Russian state propaganda saying that white helmets are false flagging themselves and that these rebels are doing it. And it becomes very complicated because then you have to figure out not burning the source, not jeopardizing sources, but still getting this valuable news out, because this is the entire world needs to know about it. And we've done this for quite a number of years because we have the technology now that allows anybody anywhere to network with each other. Just 10 years ago, this wouldn't even have been possible. So if we're on a list of, I'm sure we've pissed off numerous governments and corporations. like if we didn't, we wouldn't be doing our jobs or our craft, our trade. We barely even have a budget for this, which is even the most shocking part. But if we ended up getting put on lists because people don't consider us journalists or what have you, then I've got something really shocking for them. All they have to do is talk to us, and they're we'll blow their minds. I do consider this account being shut down as and silencing journalists, silencing free speech, and silencing a great bullhorn that we've had, and many people have come to know us. I've noticed over the past years, we've noticed mathematical things, such as our posts not going as far as they used to. We would call this shadow banning, that so many alt-right people complain about. They get shadow banned, and we never complained about that. We've noticed things like, Julian's lurching to the alt-right, to the, obsessed with Hillary Clinton, knowing that there was something really going on there, and even in conversations on other platforms, able to, he could not answer simple questions and be transparent, and we kind of set up a, we kind of became these, I want to say black sheep at the time, but we were definitely warning people that something was really amiss with WikiLeaks before people really understood it. And it's a shame because what happened with the election, that it wasn't even about sharing news. It was just about about weaponized information that he dumped into an election that could have been better curated. So to say that we're just like some, spammer schlubs or what have you, we've been places. I want to let somebody else talk because I've been rambling a lot. But
I just wanted to add something about spam, because that's what Facebook is saying, that it was spam. I don't know if Twitter was saying it was because of spam, but that could be. But I think Facebook or Twitter both twist the definition of the word spam, and I don't have the definition in front of me, but it means indiscriminately, repeatedly sending the same message. But if I have a link to an article that I think people should read, and I think people would be interested in. And I belong to 100 groups on Facebook that have to do with politics, and I put this article in 100 groups that have to do with politics. That's not spamming. If I put this article in a group for people who love cats, that's spamming. So I don't it's really infuriating that that Facebook is saying that it's about spam, because it's not.
I'd like to also preface, we did not get banned off of Facebook. It was only Twitter. But Twitter is where we've had most of our reach and success, where it reaches, despite having 60,000 followers tops. The network that we had could reach millions of people.
And
Absolutely.
Hey, this is Dan. Real quick, I just want to point out that the bigger truth about what happened with Facebook and Twitter shutting down all these accounts. If you read that New York Times story carefully that came out accompanying this, that was sort of the explanation of this. They say that the headline says this is the Russian playbook. That's the headline. And it says that basically, it sort of implies that it's a trick to send people to websites that have banner ads. That's what the article says. You read it on the New York Times, and if your ad blocker's on, then it's asking you for money because they need to show their ads. And that's what Facebook is too, something with interesting links that has ads on it. And I think if you look carefully at that story, it shows you that there's a real normative hostility to monetize publishing, which we were not even really engaged with. We have not been trying to monetize anything, and we certainly haven't been buttressing the preferred storylines of Russian state media either. I really thought that New York Times story really showed that something real weird is going on that is not well explained and has not been explained in detail to anyone.
Absolutely. I think, even Vlad touched on that. Everybody's touched on that. And we all are aware of, and we have to recognize the progression over time of the box getting smaller, the walls getting nearer. Everybody could feel it. Everybody could know it. But in the last 2 years, the pace has really picked up. You can go back to when Alphabet, Google were the first ones that said they were going to direct towards what they called credible sources and away from speculative sources. Well, that's a subjective argument, and I thought it was a big sign, and it was the beginning of things. Let's recognize that the Facebook executive for whatever they want to call their Enlightenment division is none other than Nathaniel Gleicher, whose previous job was in the Obama White House on the National Security Council, and he was a director for cybersecurity policy. So, things have been getting closer and closer. The sound of the mortars aren't too distant anymore. For people like Vlad and Nikki, who are, have a very different viewpoint about what censorship and suppression is certainly compared to me being out in the middle of fucking Canada, and even for you guys who live every day in the continental United States, can we really be surprised that this happened? The surprise is always that, they hit us. But the overall picture, is it really a surprise to anybody here?
Okay, I want to jump in here. So we obviously were surprised because it sucks to lose all your followers and not be able to speak to people and be silenced. But we were ready, actually. And we were ready because, partially because me and Nikki started being targeted 2 years ago. But we created basically a system where when they shut down our Twitter accounts, we were still in communications. I think Joe mentioned earlier, we didn't use Facebook that much to diffuse. That was also a conscious decision because in 2014, when these decisions were actually made, Facebook was employing so many algorithms already for controlling what people see, what you post, that our Facebook page, which had about 30,000, 40,000 followers, you post something and 100 people see it. So it's like useless, right? Unless you pay Facebook money. So we're like, screw Facebook for the purposes of using diffusion. Let's focus on Twitter, which wasn't censored. And that's how we sort of helped to start this internet revolution, because by creating this huge network of people who are working together, we were able to amplify on Twitter and like hit millions of people per month, literally millions. And we used that. The first time we used it was in the Gaza war, during the Gaza war, where we made sure that everyone understood that children were being murdered by bombs. And the way we did it was we identified people on the ground in Gaza who worked in hospitals, who were students, who were civilians, who were using Twitter. And we spoke to them, and then we started amplifying the voices in such a way that when you woke up in the morning in LA, the first thing you saw was all the babies that were murdered the previous night. And that worked. And then at the end of the Gaza war, Ferguson happened. And we used the same network to amplify Ferguson. Suddenly, and then every other like person of color that was murdered in cold blood in the streets of American cities by the police that were paid to supposedly maintain order. And obviously, suddenly all these people talking about this became dangerous for the society. That's how we ended up watchlisted and whatnot. But we knew that eventually they would try to shut down this network. And we were ready for it. So the next step, what is the next step? The next step is obviously you have to build your own site. The only problem is you speak, but nobody can hear you because everyone is on Facebook, is on Twitter. And nobody knows that you said anything, right? So now we're coming to the next point. And the next point is that, okay, so Facebook and Twitter, if everyone is on these networks, that means those networks are not just private corporations. They're utilities. They're basically the same as the electric company. They can't ban anyone.
Oh.
They have to give you electricity. What did you say?
Yes, sir. Oh, you dropped out for a couple seconds. There were a couple seconds of silence. But
sorry, yeah. I'm
exactly.
All right, I'll see. I think I said enough. I'll cede the floor to someone else.
Who's up?
So I would like to point out that part of what they've been doing to Vlad and Nikki has been insinuating that Vlad is secretly holding a Russian passport and thus also working for the Russian government, which is a ludicrous accusation. Because I know that I know his whole life story. He's told me his whole life story. That it's not possible. And in fact, we've been pretty integral to getting the activist community to stop relying on Russia Today to amplify their causes. Back about 3 years ago, I worked for Sputnik for 5 weeks, and got a really eye-opening view about how the Russian state media operates, and they just will say anything. They called anybody in Syria opposing Assad terrorists. They have their paid minions to say to badmouth white helmets and refugees and all of that. And when they asked me to go fetch John Brennan, CIA director's stolen hacked emails, I said no because I was like, that's I'm putting myself in really bad legal jeopardy. Also, you're the Russian government. And I remember, like, I got kicked out of, he got so pissed, he was like, you're blackmailing me, get the fuck out of my office. I'm like, okay, Mindy, peace. And I told Vlad, I'm like, yo, Vlad, I just got fired by the Kremlin. They wanted to get into activist circles really badly in America and do their things and be able to target their troll farm operations at people. And we were kind of clued in a little bit to that. We had seen bits and pieces, like Adrian Chen discovering initially the troll farm in St. Petersburg. But we knew something was up, and we were not ready. We were not willing to let that happen, nor were we willing to amplify.
Oh. His connection must have dropped off. Okay, well, anybody else? What the hell?
I want to jump
yeah,
in here.
Okay.
I have another thing. Hello? This
Yeah, I
is
was
Vlad
just going
again.
to say,
I want to add another thing. Can you hear me?
I just want to go ahead, Vlad.
Okay, so I want to point something out that's very important, I think, for the consideration of this, and that's what happened, the recent history in Turkey. And by recent, I mean from 2014 on. And what happened was that in Turkey, what they did was they basically instituted a takeover of democratic society, an institution of dictatorship, in the way they did it. And the story starts actually in 2013 when Occupy Gezi started. Basically, Turkey had its own version of Occupy in 2013 in Istanbul and in a lot all the major cities actually. And I was actually there because some of us went there because some of the people in our collective were Turkish, and they asked us to come.
And he came from
One of the
15M.
people came in for 15M, yes. But what happened afterwards, after they evicted the square, was that the Turkish government set up a propaganda department of 6,000 people. And their job was to enter all the Facebook groups, enter all the public discourse, and to try to subvert the discussion, similar to China model. Not that different, actually, from the Russian troll model, which I'm going to get to in a second. And basically, what they did was they subverted this open platforms, which were supposed to free us. The promise of the internet in 2011 was it was going to allow us to speak to each other, to coordinate, to collaborate, and so on. So the first thing, they polluted that. And then they started banning any newspaper or any media outlet, or suppressing them, like literally raiding them physically in Turkey, that was not following the company line. And then after that, they basically, so after they controlled the media and they had the strong army in place, basically, they were able to basically manufacture consent for a position of dictatorship. So we're kind of following maybe a similar line in the United States right now. We have a government that's not that different from Erdogan's government. And now we're beginning to see the banning of media outlets which are not supportive. And we see mainstream media outlets like New York Times falling in line to support the purge. I had a huge argument with a New York Times reporter that I used to work with very closely, used to give information all the time. And he started justifying the purges to me. And he started telling me that the purges were justified because these people just spam us and were publishing fake news. And I thought to myself, fake news? I mean, what the hell is fake news? Yes, I understand fake news when you make up like stories or that you can prove are fake. That's probably how you fight fake news. You prove that it's fake. You don't just say everyone who is not like approved is fake news, which is what's going on here. So this is kind of aware. This is very important to understand. So we're in the critical point, and we see other examples like Turkey to where it goes. So people need to think. People could think really like listening to this and thinking about what's going on. They say, okay, fine. Do I really want to live in equivalent American version of Turkey? And if you don't, then you should probably, get active. And you can get active in many ways. I mean, one of the things we should do is like any representative that takes money from Facebook and Twitter is suspect. I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican. They're bought. So we need to think about it. We should start publishing lists of people who are bought by this surveillance complex and so on. And then obviously you need to support independent media. And there's a huge crisis of journalism in America. Journalism doesn't make any money. People can't support themselves in journalism. All the newspapers are going down. The only media companies that survive are the ones that are owned by billionaires. And then you have groups like Anti-Media, which actually were able to make some money to keep some people on subsistence level, just being banned outright, to be knocked out. So if people want freedom, they need to have free media. And if they want free media, they need to support it. So we need to have these subscriber models where the citizens are making sure that the media stays alive. So anyway, I'm going to again cede the floor because I'm sure a lot of people have a lot to say.
See, now that brings up something else I was curious about, and I've read it in a couple of the articles that have gone around. Maybe Dan is the one to answer this. What about the SEO targeting? What about the way they have just been taking away even search access? I mean, I read that Mint Press had their views on their website go down like 95% in 4 months. I know GlobalRev felt it too. How much of a factor is this in suppression?
Well, I think, we definitely saw, it seems like it really kind of went down in about the middle of last year. A lot of different websites were talking about, huge variability in their amount of traffic and their amount of prominence. For the most part, I've been inclined to think that the articles that World Socialist website has posted about this subject have really mostly been pretty solid. And I do think that, okay, what I want to mention is what's come up in the last few days is the fraud involved with video statistics. All of the more mainstream organizations, the more mainstream publishers, tons of them laid off their writers and did a pivot to video on the basis of information that Facebook knew was false for a year. And they laid off all their writers and then tried to post videos. People didn't watch them, and so it was a double failure. And that caused even more collapse and more consolidation in the world of journalism through fraud in advertising statistics and practices. Business fraud that is the province of the Federal Trade Commission in the United States. Huge, huge impact, and that's very linked to the algorithmic shadiness and the sort of black box methodology that some people, whether it's shadow banning or other algorithmic stuff. A couple other quick points. One was that this user Pinboard pointed out that Google and Facebook put money into a lot of legislators, including especially a lot of Republicans, through leadership PACs, like guys like Steve Scalise and other leading figures in Congress have PACs. So the corporations put their money in the PAC, and then that leader sends the money out to the provinces. And so that's one of the major money sources in Iowa, for example. So that's a mechanism, and then the tech workers are pressured to put money into the PACs that then go into the system. So that's and there's a whole kind of movement happening in Silicon Valley called Tech Won't Build It that's adding more friction to this. And when people do stuff at Amazon, that refracts over to Google, it refracts around, so there's energy building in that sector. The other thing is that we started GlobalRev in New York, and we spent so much time in this studio in this funky crumbling building in the middle of Occupy Wall Street, and we get shut down, and then a couple of days, and we always would amplify New York protests. We sort of started outwards from there, right? And then we get shut down, and then Gavin McInnes gives a speech waving his sword around and simulating murders at the Republican Metropolitan Club, and then his goons are out beating people outside, and then the same journalists that we've been retweeting for 7 years don't have access to our retweets anymore. They're out there covering it. They're the front line, covering that, and then a couple hours later, I see ads for Gavin and his stupid show in YouTube being promoted at me, CRTV, So they cleared out all that kind of those libertarian right pages, right? Free Thought Project, it's not the kind of politics, generally speaking, that I agree with, There's been plenty of stories put out on all these different channels that, I'm not down with, right? But they're way less toxic than the kind of message that people like Gavin put out. And so all those channels have been eliminated, and that makes all the space for Gavin and more toxic people, the hard right, the gateway pundits. They didn't get their stuff deleted. It was people that was more moderate than them, right? And Facebook had high-level meetings with far-right publishers in the last few months, right? And none of them are having trouble. It's all the people that didn't have money, that weren't quite that far right, like they were right-wing libertarians, right? They didn't have the resources. They all got deleted, But the far right and the people that were connected did not get deleted. Like, I honestly, that just that is like the shape of it to me. It makes more space for the Gavin types, more space to reach people. I think all those trends are lining up, and they seem to be so tightly connected. That's just how it jumps at me after all we've seen over the years.
I want to jump in on that and say that it's very obvious. It has been obvious for years now that so-called right-wing causes, and these people, they get preferential treatment, while they simultaneously complain that the left wing is getting, preferential treatment. But the sort of behavior that Gavin and Coulter and these, a lot of them are even representatives. They engage in behavior on social media that would be, even our so-called president should have been banned off of Twitter by now for stuff that he has done, things that he's said and cited and libeled, and he's still allowed to have a platform. And there is definitely a coordinated, algorithmic, manipulation going on that's allowing them to get preferential space on the platform, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. YouTube especially has been the platform, to red pill people. And they somehow are able to get, they've tweaked with everything. So it's constantly spewing out right-wing garbage at us all the time. And that's part of it. If it's a strategy, it's a well thought out strategy because it's overwhelming people. But at the same time, they're like Facebook and Twitter. They're engaging in some of the most mind-boggling fraud, as Dan just explained, manipulating video counts, manipulating what you end up seeing. Recently on Twitter, we've been Jack just I want to see the tweets of the people I follow and get rid of the Nazis. It's that simple. But time and time again, something that simple has been proven to be impossible. And I blame it on the fact that there's been money pouring into politicians, into other dark money groups, back and forth between Twitter and Facebook, and people like Zuckerberg and Jack and Sheryl Sandberg, they're cowards. They're absolute cowards. They think that if a bunch of alt-righters are going to get banned, that Peter Thiel is going to pull all of his investment out of it and crash their companies. But the longer this keeps going on, there's going to come a breaking point. People are going to get silenced, and pretty much these are going to be these assholes are going to be the only ones left on here. And guys like Gavin shouldn't even have a platform. It's ridiculous. The stuff that dude says and does, he should not be platformed on any of these networks. There are people that have, like us and others, that have made livings or made hobbies or just contributed positively to the overall ether of internet, and these people don't, and yet they get the preferential treatment because there's millions and billions of dollars at stake backing them, and the decision-making process, even with Jack personally intervened to make sure that Alex Jones initially didn't get banned. I should just tell you what's going on with the leadership of the company. I'd like to see the floor.
I think this is a perfect demonstration of how crony capitalism uses. They never win a market. They put everybody else out of the market and just absorb it. They're doing the same thing on social media. Now, if anybody wants to follow up what Dan said, because I want to quote one paragraph from an article that was in Mint Press by Whitney Webb, and it regards Facebook. These efforts to censor independent media on social media began in earnest following Facebook's announcement this past May that Facebook would be teaming up with the notoriously hawkish think tank, the Atlantic Council. According to Facebook, the Atlantic Council, which is funded by the governments of the United States, the United Kingdom, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as weapons manufacturers such as Lockheed Martin, would use their digital forensics research lab, DFR lab. That is run and paid for by the Atlantic Council, and that is now who is Facebook's eyes and ears in its efforts to clamp down on quote-unquote disinformation and quote-unquote fake news. So, when these are the guys, these are the ones watching the hen house. So, is it time to deplatform these fuckers?
Well, how do we? How do we just tell the Atlantic Council to go take a hike, or Facebook to just do we leave? How do we take our friends with us to communicate off of this platform? I'm glad you brought up Atlantic Council, because and Lockheed Martin as well, because our government, sells weapons to, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. Saudi might not be part of Atlantic Council, but we can't critically say things about people. There was one story that I was following and breaking, 2 years ago, which was James Comey, the FBI director, gets confirmed by a bunch of senators who all get paid by Lockheed Martin after Comey was working at Lockheed Martin as their lead lawyer, while Hillary Clinton is selling Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and whoever else their F-35 planes that don't even work. And they just let him skate in. It wasn't a particular. Nobody in the Senate really cared about this massive conflict of interest. And then, him not wanting to investigate Hillary further, or, this. None of this about Lockheed Martin ever came up. Or, the interest of the military-industrial complex. When all of these people, these right-wing freaks, I'm just going to say they're a bunch of right-wing freaks, they're clamoring for Comey to be fired, and none of this had anything to do with selling weapons to despots in the Middle East, our senators being bought by the manufacturers selling these weapons. If people would, all I have to say really is if people had just listened to us and Occupy Wall Street when we demanded money out of politics, I think this whole world would be a much better place. But we have groups like biased groups like the Atlantic Council. There's not really going to be any groups that aren't biased. Every group is going to have some sort of swing or interest, and there's the idea of objectivity and independence is not going to be found. It'll be like an oasis on this digital ether, and even if they replace Atlantic Council with a different group of people, it will be run like they will be. There won't be a democratizing force deciding who gets to stay and who doesn't. They will just do it, and that's the sort of digital fascism that we are heading to, because we just we're not in control of our own data, our own personhood on the internet.
Now, before anybody else jumps in, I found my list.
And add something to this. So besides, so Facebook admitted that it's always like follow the money type situation, but obviously there are think tanks, private think tanks, which are coming up with lists of people and groups to be censored. I mean, this is the new America. But this is not that new, because at the end of last year, even Intercept had a very interesting article they found out that Israel had a special relationship with Facebook, where they literally would just hand them lists of Palestinians that need to be banned. And not even Palestinians in occupied territories, Palestinians anywhere in the world. I'm in Spain. I met Palestinians here in Spain who've been banned, just out of the blue. And so basically, like this whole system of, I call it the system of appeasement, almost. It's very similar to appeasement. That I think that's what really happened, in my opinion, actually, with Facebook and Twitter. They don't want to be regulated. They don't want to be in a position, for example, where they have to justify when they ban someone. So when like fascist governments, like Israel's government, comes to them and says, censor these people or we will regulate you, they try to appease those dictators. They appease Chinese censors, and they appease Israeli censors, and now they're going to appease Trump's censors. Because make no mistake, Trump was threatening Facebook and Twitter for the last 2 months that he's going to do executive orders and start regulating them, and now the ban hammer came. And then to hide it, they censored a few fascist pages, just to make it look like they're going up as a fascist. At New York Times ran this huge propaganda article. They shut down, quote-unquote, right-wing news, when in reality they were shutting down every group on Facebook that was talking about police accountability. So it's basically there's all the indicators are there of what's happening. All the pieces of information are there. It's not like it's happening and nobody knows what's going on. It's there. If you look around, you can connect the crumbs of information and come up with a pretty complete picture. Yes, that Atlantic Council is obviously like weaponizing the censorship list. And it's pretty easy to get it. You don't need to be a group. Like my personal account got on it. My wife's personal account got it. We tweet maybe 10 times a month. We're not even that active. The people who were working as editors of Anti-Media, the same thing happened to them. So it's about shutting down individuals, not just groups. And it's basically following a pattern that has already been established. It's been established in Turkey. Russia took the Turkish model and created like an invasion force, so to speak, invaded American elections with it. And now the American security agencies, security state, is now employing the same techniques and going to try to control the population. And all this hinges on Facebook and Twitter remaining monopolies of where people interact. And this this now leads to the last main thing I wanted to say. Fascism happens when other people do nothing. Fascism happens when other people see that this is happening and they don't act on it. And the way people need to act on it is they need to get on Facebook. There are other platforms out there, Mastodon. Everyone just start setting up accounts and try to start using those things. Otherwise, goodbye freedom.
Absolutely.
I wanted to jump in real quick on the point of digital publishing, and I work as a developer, so it's always a question of like putting things out on the internet. So my quick suggestion is that everyone should check out a website called indieweb.org. That's INDIEWEB.org. And there's an idea there which is really publish once, syndicate elsewhere. And so you create your own website that is like an activity stream, using certain types of software. You can adapt WordPress to this, a lot of other platforms. And then your site will copy out to Facebook and Twitter, but the base of your information is outside of what they call the silos, the digital like farm silos of information, right? So Posse is better than silos. If you follow that axiom, you're in a much healthier information environment. So there are constructive steps, and I think that that's a key part of the whole picture, and it gets you out of that submissive situation. So I just wanted to throw that in, indieweb.org.
That's an excellent strategy. That's good digital tactical deployment. Now, before we get any further, as Vlad said, this is the thing that really pisses me off in this day and age. Everybody is so afraid of saying that F word. Fascism exists. Recognize it, because the way it wins is when nobody recognizes it. Now, like he said about the corporate control, I have a fuller list of who funds the Atlantic Council. And for those who weren't aware, the same organization owns Bellingcat. APAC funds the Atlantic Council. Bank of America, Mellon Bank, BASF, BP America, Elbit Systems of America, the European Investment Bank, the Foreign Office of the United Kingdom, JP Morgan Chase, Lockheed Martin, NATO, Northrop Grumman, Pfizer, Raytheon, Rockefeller Brothers Fund, Textron, Boeing, Dow Chemical, 21st Century Fox, the United States Air Force, the United States Army, the United States Marine Corps, the United States Navy, the United States Department of State, and the United States Chamber of Commerce. If that's not enough to demonstrate 21st century fascism, I don't know what is. I surrender the floor.
Because I really like them.
Well, you know, how come they didn't get hurt yet? You know? How many of those follows is Bellingcat going to pick up over the next 2 weeks? That's what somebody should be watching. Because they're protected. There's no way that a DFR lab is going to take down Bellingcat page.
No. And the other thing is, too, there's a group of these people who think that, we say bad or critical things about America and the bad things that we've done, our military adventurism in the Middle East and, exposing, war crimes and everything. Oh, that must be Russia. You must be backed by Russia. It's like, no. Just no. Like, some people who rush to say that, I'm like, are you serious, really? Like, don't sit down, you comrade.
Or if you're against Hillary, if you criticize Hillary, then you're a Russian asset or whatever.
Right. And another very important thing that's going on here, super important thing to notice, is that what they're targeting is the fact that people are working together to produce news. Yeah. They don't want people to collaborate because that's what really scares them. They don't want people to communicate. So if they see a network like GlobalRev, or for that matter, Anti-Media, by the way, because Anti-Media, we might have not been big fans of their politics. And actually, I was actually one of the people in GlobalRev who wasn't like that concerned about Anti-Media. I always thought that Anti-Media just had a very liberal editorial policy. They let everyone publish on the platform. And, as long as you could write well, you could publish. So different people came up with different ideas, and that's a philosophy I respect, even within a particular platform. Maybe it wasn't congruent with what we were doing as a collective, but it definitely makes sense. But what the important thing here is that it seems like they're targeting the decentralized groups of people working together because that's what they can control. Because if there's a figurehead, there's a superstar, you can always bribe him, you can always threaten him, you can always blackmail him or her. You can always control them. But if it's a decentralized group of people, well, that's 100 times harder. And that's what they're trying to ban.
And it's amazing that they're doing this, that when, a guy like Donald comes into power and there's groups of people that are still trying to sabotage resistance against the guy and his movement and, basically all of the horrible things he stands for. I just don't understand, the motive and methodology other than, the almighty dollar at this point. It boggles my mind that there's just, at that level of government, there's just no morality. Yeah, we're just going to, interfere and silence people. Who cares, but we're going to let Fox News just be able to have, push, their articles into our phones when I never asked for it.
The long game. The long game.
Mm-hmm. When I want
Robert.
to jump in, this is Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been a little busy on my end shooting pool, but I've been listening. And jumping back to what you said a half an hour ago about credible sources, that they're only going to let credible sources, and to what Vlad just said, that they don't want us producing news. 2 weeks ago, I was on the Hill in D.C. During the Kavanaugh protests, and I was going around to Democrat and Republican offices asking why nobody was talking about Kavanaugh's record on the bench, on the appellate bench. Halliburton grossly overbilled taxpayers, and it's been stuck in the D.C. appellate court for over a decade. Now, if conservatives got their hands on that information, they probably would have had a different feeling about Kavanaugh. They might have. But my point is I turned to Casey Hunt from MSNBC outside Senator Manchin's office and said, "Why aren't you covering this?" And she says to me just in a real snotty voice, I don't know anything about that. And it's the substance. We have a lot of journalists working on substance. And mainstream media just scratches the surface. And it's repetitious. So it's controlling the narrative. And they fear people like us. I mean, during the Occupy movement and for several years after the Occupy movement, we penetrated the narrative in the mainstream. And they're afraid of us. Something that I wanted to share that I really haven't shared in any kind of media setting like this. I've only shared between a few people. Livestream.com was funding us. Dan Summers was one of the founding members, and he was our contact person.
I'm jumping in here. They never funded us. We never received a dime from Livestream. But
they gave us free live stream.
Free platform. Right. So what happened was advertisers did not want to advertise a Global Revolution live stream. And rather than censor us, Livestream gave us a free channel with no advertising. And more than that, they even gave other occupies all over the world Livestream channels. Nikki was actually coordinating that around the world. And then they came under pressure. Describe what you found out, Raf. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so I ran into Dan Summers in D.C., and I said, "Hey, what's going on? Why aren't you supporting us anymore? Why aren't you giving us the free live stream?" And he turns to me and he laughs and he says, "I got a contract with the Pentagon, and the Pentagon said to stop funding you guys because you're subversive." So, and also we still if this puts any ease on Patty's mind, we were on a list years ago and getting set up. And like Vlad said earlier on in the show, we were pretty much waiting for this to happen. Go ahead, Vlad.
No, I was just going to say, we still actually have Livestream channel. One of the people in the collective was asking me, "Hey, do we still have the old Livestream channel?" We have it, even the new Livestream channel they gave us. It's just we didn't find Livestream platform after they modified it to be as interesting as the original Livestream platform for our purposes. So we haven't used it that much. The last time it was used in 2014. It's a Livestream platform, but then we started using Twitter's Livestream platform actually because that was straight to our accounts. It was a good diffusion thing, or Facebook. But now that we need to actually get away from Twitter and Facebook, maybe Livestream is going to be a good choice. They've never cut off our free channels. They gave us free channels, Rob. It's just maybe they were giving us more support before, and they didn't follow through with the additional support. And I think they came under pressure. But I have to give Livestream credit. When they came under pressure to censor us, they did it. And that's very different from Facebook or Twitter. So I actually think give a big thumbs up to Livestream, at least from my experience. I haven't seen them interfere with us or take away support from us actually in any real meaningful way.
And this is it all gets to do a little inside baseball of like how we try to fling our messages out there. Livestream always struggled with revenue. they got bought by the company that owns Vimeo. They're being merged together. The price of the service is going to go way up next year. So it's kind of being subsumed into the Vimeo video system. I just had to throw that in.
Oh, that's good to know.
So, I mean, everybody here, everybody who's on the air except your host, has had direct hands-on experience for a considerable length of time of providing the infrastructure for global reach accounts to be put out through one account on platforms, whether it's in development or logistics or the actual getting the material and putting it up. You've all played this game for a long time. Hasn't it been moved? How long ago was it that you knew this is where this would end up eventually? I mean, I listened to Vlad. He says they knew. Robert, they knew.
The very beginning.
Pat?
I knew last Thursday.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Patti, because I know it's been ridiculously punishing to you. And I remember you streaming from Occupy, you know? And I'm sure you've got thousands of loyal followers who feel that way. Do you think it was just because they don't give a shit that they took all your stuff away? Or do you think that eventually this would happen anyway?
I would just say
I think
briefly
somebody
that
mentioned it the other day about history revisionists, because right after Occupy, a lot of the files went missing, and Vlad backed up a lot of it from both Ustream and YouTube. I lost a ton of it.
A lot of streaming crews lost a lot of stuff, either from Ustream or YouTube, just disappearing stuff.
Yeah, Ustream went down. That was a military-linked, kind of video project as well. Obviously, as is Google and everything else. But I just wanted to agree that the collaboration element is relevant here. It's no coincidence that the tweet decks, whether it's cross-posting or even just sharing accounts across services, The only reason I still have my own Twitter account is because I didn't log into TweetDeck because I'm the account holder for GlobalRevLive, so I didn't go into TweetDeck. But if I had, I would also be cleared out. It's very clear that's what they were doing. So I just agree that collaboration and setups where it's not superstars, where it's not people whose buttons are so easy to push, that is how this goes down. I really do think so.
So this means I have to be a superstar.
Pat, don't worry, you already are a superstar.
Okay, who here has actually filed an appeal with either Facebook or Twitter?
GlobalRev filed an appeal. I filed an appeal.
Me too.
Audiovisual, but that's interesting. They didn't just hit American accounts. We were collaborating with people in Sydney, people in New Zealand, with a lot of people in Spain. All of those accounts got banned as well. Audiovisual put out a statement today, actually, accusing Twitter of being a passion for censorship. And that was, I think, the wording of their appeal. It's on their Facebook page. So, yeah, I don't know who else appealed. I'm sure Patti appealed, right?
Yeah, I did appeal, and I have heard nothing back.
So, so we're encouraging everyone who appeals and talks about it to address these guys as the censorship committee. Because I think of framing this in people's minds in a very simple way is very important. And we should not refer to these things as support of Twitter. It's the censorship committee. It's a censorship committee, and it's not even the Twitter censorship committee. It's just the censorship committee, period. It's the Inquisition.
Absolutely.
speaking of Inquisition,
like
Nikki wanted to talk about a little bit. Go ahead. She's going to introduce it. But there's something that's going on in Spain that's relevant.
In Spain, we have the La Ley de la Mordaza, Mordaza law. It's a security citizen law. It was approved with 140 votes against one abstention. With this law, it was a reform of a penal code. And with this law, it made people to stop evictions. We can make photos to the police. We cannot do protests without permission. Tickets are between 30,600 euros, 600,000 euros. Yeah, fine. Indeed, among artists, we were planning some bands, what was called a rock cabarela. We wanted, to do some performance in the church, Catholic church, and we stopped it because the lawyers told us that it was going to be a fine of 600,000 euros and 6 years in jail. This Lady Mordaza has like a 200,000 victims in between activists that were stopping evictions, as well rappers.
Singers, yeah. Insulting.
Singers.
You can go to jail here now for insulting the church or the king or any government official.
Yeah, censorship has been always, but Twitter and Facebook censorship is new. Regarding my personal experience regarding this, I've been science in 2011, justice social content. I have not done anything illegal or violent. I never advocate for violence, but I was banned in USA since 2 years ago. Even I'm a wife of an American citizen, and I'm a mother of American citizen, but it doesn't matter now for the Trump government. Even was in Obama. But I think that their mistakes is that the humanity, and the humanity provide us of words, and words cannot be stopped in different ways. We're gonna spread our humanity message words. Me as a singer, I believe that we can destroy censorship in shows, and we are about to release a new album called "Ban in USA." We will be even doing a streaming tour on USA. Even I'm banned. So it will not stop our message of humanity, and we will keep amplifying the silenced voices and the victims of this, how can I say it, barbarian, because I think that these last years are coming more darkness in the human being perspective, and we very, very active. Many people are active. We don't need ONGs. We don't need media streams. We are volunteers. We don't have anything. We cannot be sold out. We will never sold out. I have not been financed by any corporation. And I think that our humanity message will be always spread out through all our networks.
I want to jump in here and I'll say, let's go back to before Facebook and Twitter became as big as they did. Let's go back to, let's say, 2005, 2006, 2007. So in 2007, YouTube was the king. It was all putting on YouTube. But let's go even farther back. Let's go back to maybe 2002, 2003. What happened in the States back then? We were going into the Iraq war. And there was a manufactured consent. New York Times, put out all of this fake news to justify the invasion of Iraq. And the approval among the population for the war was almost 90%, I believe. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was 70%. Maybe it was Afghanistan that was 90%. But it doesn't matter. We were talking about there was a manufactured consent to enter to enter this crazy military adventure that we still experiencing. So the bottom line is, back then, this is when I actually became politically active, or my politics always been around media. And I was working with a bunch of people, and we're trying to figure out, all right, so if you're working in a society where there's like 80% supporting like the Nazi regime, so to speak, like if you were in the middle of Nazi Germany almost, like in 1942, how do you go about changing people's minds? And when you have to ask this question again now, because now that they're kind of banning us from all the platforms where people speak, we're becoming this like, you know, the Christians of the, you know, of 300 AD. So the question is, how do we actually influence people's minds? And the answer, in my opinion, at least from my experience, is through art. We have to create words, we have to create messaging, we have to create ideas which touch people on a fundamental human level in such a way that they cannot look away, that they cannot say, I don't care. And we have to find a way to unite them. And this is kind of like, and if we can do that, then we'll be okay, actually. And if we don't, then the darkness will win.
Hey, this is Dan again. I just wanted to throw in two quick things. You know, one is that, you know, Senator Mark Warner from Virginia, very influential on the Democratic side, he had like a white paper about changing the internet regulations that, like, you know, came out a few months ago. And when I was listening to the hearing, the Facebook executive who was up there, you know, basically agreed that they were going to follow the white paper. Like, in so many words, they're like, oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, we want to do that. You know, and so I think that, like, what I noticed in that policy-making thing, and you can find it if you just look up, you know, Senator Mark Warner Internet Policy White Paper. Like, you know, there's less range for publishing. There's, like, you know, a lot of interest in, like, information control, you know, and you know, we haven't seen what all the effects are of this big sweep of accounts or the things that happened before it. But I do think that it's pretty obvious, you know, that the big pages, the big Facebook pages, the big Twitter accounts, that would always be the ones to post the most stuff, you know, criticizing, you know, military adventurism and hawkishness and, you know, the Lockheeds, right? All of those pages have, you know, for the most part, they've been removed. And so we do have to watch. But we do have, you know, John Bolton in as National Security Advisor. You know, we do have the President and Pompeo just, like, openly saying it's more important for us to get arms deals with the Saudis than be concerned about them, you know, using diplomatic facilities to murder journalists. Like, we're more interested in the arms deals. So we really could see more parallels to our experience in the Bush administration, more military attacks, adventures, and stuff like that. And the pages that would have been the ones to criticize that stuff, for the most part, they're gone. And so the tone is going to be different. I really think that that's potentially in the cards right now, and we should look for signs of that.
Like, I personally wish the Democrats would have gone deeper into, you know, Brett Kavanaugh and his wife, Ashley, being assistants for George W. Bush when they were leading the illegal invasion of Iraq based on, you know, absolute bullshit. That would have been like the coup de grace. I think they might have been able to, you know, embarrass everybody so bad, but they couldn't because guess what? Democrats are owned by the military-industrial complex too. So naturally, they're too chicken shit to say anything about that, you know. And I could say something as incendiary as like, yeah, Brett and Ashley Kavanaugh are war criminals due to they would basically be the equivalent of Hitler's secretaries at Nuremberg. Something as incendiary as saying that goes nowhere. But other paid lobbyist social media, some say like Turning Point USA supporting it, or this Judicial Crisis Network, that's what we get spammed with, or we get, you know, Twitter and Facebook have figured out how to make those particular messages heard before anything else, basically eliminating any sort of organic virality in the matter. I really wish that the Democrats would have gone there, also along with the D.C. court in Halliburton. But, the Democrats are probably also owned, like I said, by Halliburton and everyone. And it's just really sad. We had this movement to get money out of politics. It gets crushed by the government. And now we see that both sides, same as it always was, is totally owned by these weapons manufacturers, these industries of death that, I talk to everybody about this, and we all seem to be on the same page in the real world about who's causing the problems and who's causing the corruption. Even people that, work for institutes surrounding these industries get it. But the message is getting censored on Twitter, on Facebook, on social media. It's a thing that they have the they want to call it anti-government. I call it, anti-warmongering. Sensible, peaceful government with less conflict. They have created a battle space for this over the past decade with social media when they figured out how to flood it with money to keep it's no longer an even playing field. It's not neutral. It's not fact-based either. Facts don't go.
Well, I mean, if you want to switch that corporate demand structure over to Twitter, I got a list here of the top 10 owners of Twitter stock.
Does that include Prince Walid bin Talal?
Oh, yeah, but I mean, up against institutional investors, no single person has anywhere near the clout of some of these funds. Vanguard Group owns 9%. Morgan Stanley Investment owns almost 6%. BlackRock owns 4.5%. And in the last quarter, they bought 5.7 million shares, increased their stake by a fifth. So, I mean, it's the same old players. And something like BlackRock, well, there's 50 evil motherfuckers at that board. So how do you even know what the real play is they're doing? This has just become so monolithic that anybody who doesn't think that the corporations and the government have never been closer in any of our lifetimes, it's just, that's what, like Vlad was saying, it's becoming so obvious. It's in the front window now. So, what do we do? Oh, I have someone else to introduce who finally made it. Matt Slow Motion Solo is with us. Come on, connect. There we go. Hello, Matt. How you doing?
Sorry, this isn't Matt. This is Mike.
Oh, sorry. You pressed 1.
Well, thanks for taking my call, I guess. Sorry, maybe thought of someone else, but I just wanted to ask you, if your issue is with government fascism and the government and corporations together basically controlling everything, wouldn't the last thing to do is to go along with these statist progressives who are determined to give the government even more power and more control, which the corporations can?
I guess we had to get our one right-wing troll, right? Okay, well, like I said, the ownership of Twitter is pretty black and white. They're not concerned with user freedom. They're not concerned with dissemination of accurate information. They're concerned with their message and their agenda. So, like you guys said,
your troll isn't concerned with truth either, because he's making assumptions about us. Some of us are anarchists, so.
Well, yeah, but I mean, obviously, it was, that's why I gave him as much time as I did to see which number 1 to 5 he was going to use.
It wasn't publicly owned before. there was a private ownership, so, they kind of had more control. I don't, there's obviously, it's a double-edged sword, private or public ownership. The private ownership seemed to, I feel in the early days, they had more of a, they cared about the integrity of their platform a bit more. I feel like once they went public, like once Facebook went public too, any pretense, so it was all about the investors. And that's it, really. I just see that with any platform or any company that goes public on an exchange. And that's not to say I completely agree with private ownership, but that's just what I've seen it trend to. The degradation of the integrity of the media system. It always ends up being subsumed by right wing, or not even really right. I don't even really want to call it right wing. I think just low quality sort of authoritarianism and just misinformation. I don't see a way that Twitter or Facebook reverses the trend into like a soup of just nonsense.
Well, and I think what you see in just in so many sectors is like the people that are really calling the shots, they only want there to be a few players, whether that's broadcast television and radio or the market share of social media. But these networks are also very saturated, right? They're not like getting like that many more users. So I do think that again, it does come back to alternative publishing, and also too, I think that more people are like on the down low kind of are mad about the amount of sway that Facebook and Google especially have, and so I think that there might be more moves, kind of like the Bezos Act that Bernie put out there a little while ago, which did pressure Amazon into some concessions recently. That I think that there might be moves that will recognize that since Silicon Valley has been turned into a tiny handful of big players, it doesn't develop into a good ecosystem. So maybe it will be harder, politically for mergers to keep happening, for all of these industries to just be gobbled up, and I think that like that trend is so solidified right now, but there's talk under the radar, so it might change, like maybe soon.
And there's another way to put a fear of God into Twitter and Facebook. I think what we need is this social media users' Bill of Rights. What we need is laws that say that you cannot ban someone just because, with no reason, like they did with us, or for some reason, or if you do ban them for a reason, that group or that individual, they should have a right to challenge it. There should be a concept of due process if you're silent. Because we don't have that, we don't have freedom of speech. If we have institutions like Twitter and Facebook which control 80 or 90% of all the discourse in our society, accountable to no one, banning people at will for any purpose whatsoever without due process, like I said, it's a disaster. It's fascism, like we said. It's a destruction of the American democracy. And the only way maybe to save it right now is to regulate them. And the way we regulate them, we don't want government censorship boards. We want a process. We want a process when they silence you, you can go to court and sue them for damages and make them pay. The corporations, they're worried about profit. Let's make censorship non-profitable. And this can be done through a referendum. In California, for example, we can do a referendum and institute this Bill of Rights.
Absolutely. When I went to RightsCon this year in Toronto, Ontario, in May, they had what they called the Toronto Declaration that was a digital Bill of Rights. And that was a conference with 2,300 attendees from 108 countries. So it's a good start, but like anything else, that's not coming from, NATO or the UN or the OECD. It's coming from human rights organizations around the world. So, how much will it really matter? But it's a start, is it not?
Well, I'm just that this news about the advertising fraud. I just want to come back to it because it is like the center of gravity of their power. One is user data, right, and then the GDPR at least gives a starting template model for how to regulate that better. But the second is the advertising revenue, and so there are people outside of Google and Facebook are starting to try to come up with a way, these other heavy hitters, of undercutting this monopoly. And I do think that is, if you want to look at the power they have, economically speaking, that's the core in their engine. Those two things, the user data and the just advertising revenue directly. So keep an eye on it.
Now, we brought up the topic about spam. That was the common buzzword they used. And the email that you all saw from Twitter with, for the following reasons, nothing there. That's very familiar to me. I've gotten those in the past. But as far as them saying spam, I have Twitter's definition of spam here. And it's funny how spam to them can be just about anything they want, anytime they want. But they do go into a little bit of detail. And it's, if you have aggressive following or follower churn. Well, none of your accounts had that. If you send tweets with links with no text, that's spam for sure. You guys didn't do that. If a large number of spam complaints have been filed, that's something that none of you are ever going to get an answer from. This could have been a bot trigger algorithm, and none of you will ever know. If you post duplicative or substantially similar content, replies, or mentions over multiple accounts, or multiple duplicate updates on one account, I think that's what they called when they took two of my accounts. Then they called it cross-promotion. And they were going to permaban all three of my accounts because of cross-promotion. And I asked them in an email, when are they going to ban CNN, NBC, all the networks, all, Guardian newspaper? You telling me that the headquarter Twitter account doesn't tweet what their reporters are tweeting, and vice versa?
They do.
That's cross-promotion.
They do. I can verify that they do, because when I was a social media manager doing Twitter, I'm trying to learn how to improve doing Twitter. So what am I doing? I'm looking at all of those accounts and seeing what they're doing. And all of those accounts, they would cross-promote on all of their Twitter accounts, like maybe they had a tweet deck. Because that's what a social media manager would do. Is they would have all of those accounts, and the social media manager would cross-promote everything. Absolutely, they've done it. I've done it. It's not a bad thing. It's not spamming because and it's not spamming because all of these accounts are related, and all of their accounts are related. And it's not spamming when they do it. It's not spamming when I do it. Spamming is a random act. Spamming is sending something to someone who you don't have no idea if they're going to want it or not.
Exactly. And you don't really care who gets it. You're just sending it.
Two little quick facts.
And that's a stupid, and spam is a very stupid, ineffective way of doing things, and none of us are stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But two quick things. One is that the department at BuzzFeed that decides where to cross-post things is called the curation department, the curation team. And then, I forgot my other point.
But my point was, when Twitter wanted to take my three accounts for cross-promotion, and then I brought this up, and they said, we don't care. And then I said, well, it's not like I can't communicate with, maybe 5,000 other users on your platform, and you're going to be asked about cross-promotion. Then they said, pick one of your accounts. We're stealing the other two. Shut up. So, I think they've just taken that word out from doing the same thing. Now it's not cross-promotion. It's posting duplicative or substantially similar content over multiple accounts. Because what I said to them was, so if CNN has all its reporters tweet the same clip on the CNN site, that's not cross-promotion, and you're telling me CNN doesn't know the password of every one of those accounts? Because that's what they were pulling on me. Well, I had the logins. So, I'm a bad guy. And I said, so what's the deal with CNN? And then that's when they said, okay, you can have one account. Leave us alone. I mean, that was 2 years ago.
They could have dozens of accounts. Major media conglomerates, other, brands could have dozens of accounts. But, us or other groups, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I have found so many obvious instances of hypocrisy on this platform. You could also say this for, politics, the GOP. Constantly, you'll see the same exact tweet tweeted from 18 accounts. Charlie Kirk and some random I don't know, diaper baby 1488, and other clowns, verbatim saying the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, you guys have a tweet there, but it's totally cool because we need to maintain your status quo as a party. Or as a system, as a political system. But another group of people, maybe organizing in an activist space, a non-governmental, horizontal sort of, that's somehow not cool. And there's just been so many instances of this, like at Donald himself just, harassing people, using his 50 million followers to harass anybody that goes against him, and he should have been banned by now. There were other candidates that should have been banned during their presidential campaigns, but nope. Jack and Twitter were just far too chicken shit to take a stand about it. Because I remember George Pataki. Do you remember Governor Pataki of New York? He tweeted something basically saying about getting rid of all the Muslims, and I was like, okay, dude, you should be banned, but they're not going to ban you because politics. You're special.
And what I remember what I was going to say was just that this right wing operative, Sally Albright, is one of these people that kind of slithered into the Democratic circles and acts all resistancy, kind of like David Frum, Anna Navarro, those NBC anchors, so Sally Albright clearly was using Buffer app to load stuff, run things for Share Blue, post Hillary things against Bernie and blah blah blah, and it was all figured out. I mean, she's doing fine. She's not banned or anything. She was just pumping stuff for her buddies, and that's none of this stuff that was ever involved with Global Rev is anywhere close to the kind of spam behavior that this lady was running, and she is doing fine on Twitter. No problem there, even though it's all obvious. So that's the kind of thing. That's the spamming.
I imagine she has a big.
I want to jump in there. This is Rob. As far as Hillary Clinton, it was utterly disgraceful what she did on Facebook, her people. During the primary, what she called her social media gurus shut down at least 5 Bernie Sanders pages on one of those big days where there were 5 states doing primaries, and nothing happened to her. Nothing at all.
There you go. Now, Twitter has been making some changes that people haven't, remember it used to be when terms of service got updated, they'd post it themselves for a week? That don't happen anymore. They made some changes on October 1st. Now, I think this is just polite language for MAC address algorithm, but this is called attributed activity. As per the Twitter rules on this day, if we are able to reliably attribute an account on Twitter to an entity known to violate the Twitter rules, we will take action on additional accounts associated with that entity. We are expanding our enforcement approach to include accounts that deliberately mimic or are intended to replace accounts we have previously suspended for violating our rules. So I think, Patti, that tells you right there how so many of your accounts disappeared. Everybody on TweetDeck, this is what they're using right here. Attributed activity.
Because of the MAC address.
The thing is, the attributed activity that they're talking about then is from before October 1st. Because we actually weren't using my account, like Vlad Teichberg account, for example, was not in the TweetDeck because I took it out of the TweetDeck actually to start publishing the story about harassment. You can focus on that. And that was done in September, so before October 1st. Yet it was banned. So they're basically changing the rules.
Yes.
Retroactively.
And then retroactively enforcing them, exactly. And
sorry.
Let me finish.
I'm sorry.
Let me finish one thing, and I'll pass the floor to you, Patty. I'm sorry. So they're doing this retroactively, which sounds like it should be wrong and illegal. But the fact is, what I understand, they can do anything they want. They can violate their own rules because they're a private corporation. So I'm just wondering, so this is why they need to be regulated, at least to the degree that they have to guarantee certain rights to the users. The users of the platform deserve a Bill of Rights. Patty, over to you.
Okay, so I was saying that these rules are being applied retroactively. One of the accounts that was suspended from Anti-Media was Anti-Media UK. The last time anyone tweeted on that account, and I never did, but last time it was used was May of 2017. So over a year ago, they're saying that that account broke some rule, and I can't imagine what rule it would break except that they tweeted Anti-Media accounts. I don't know, I don't know.
It's guilt by association. It's guilt by association. You don't, and it's basically like they can always change the rule tomorrow to make sure whatever you did today is illegal, and they don't have to follow their own rules anyway, because they're not bound by courts to follow their own rules. So it's basically.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish.
Well, so basically, this is the situation, and this is the crux of the problem. So. I think as more and more people in the country realize this, I think we're going to get more and more support to put some controls on their behavior, or maybe break up these companies. I don't know. AT&T was broken up in the end. That was the solution, right?
Yeah. I want to point out that the other day, during the Kavanaugh hearings, somebody doxed one of the other accusers of his, and Mike Cernovich tweeted it out to his 500,000 followers, retweeted it, this sock puppet account, which could have been him, probably one of his friends, or somebody who sent it on a burner phone somewhere. And thus, but he, knowing that he is retweeting, personal docs of a person for, express purpose of harassing this person, and he still has he still has an account. There are many of these people have done this. What was the thing that he tweeted Lindsey Graham's cell phone number one time and nothing happened. Many of these people engage in ridiculously, according to Twitter's own rules, not posting personal information, not inciting harassment. It seems to me like this is all they do, and they get a pass on it. And I, just after watching this for years, and I'm like, if we take the position that Twitter is a corporation and thus has rights because Citizens United means corporations has rights, they could have cleared this platform out. If Jack was like, if in Bizarro universe, if Jack was cool, he would have, got rid of all these jerks by now. But, he hasn't. These people are allowed to stay. They're allowed to just pollute the tweet sphere. These people are allowed to just post the most ridiculously untrue information, and the so-called info, this fake info clearinghouse thing, doesn't do anything to them. Taking these people, we talk about at what point does somebody deserve to be taken off of social media or be banned? And before GlobalRev, which we don't even have a reason for being banned, I can think of thousands and thousands of other people and accounts that should probably have been cast off into netherworld of the internet by now, but we haven't. It hasn't happened. It's selective and arbitrary. It's arbitrary and capricious is basically where I feel that the application of these rules, their own terms of service, have gone. If we're looking at right now with, I doubt any of you guys have seen what's coming out of Saudi Arabia, but many prominent Saudi Twitter accounts have basically been threatening the lives of anybody daring to report on what has been happening, reporting on Khashoggi's assassination and dismemberment inside of the consulate in Istanbul. And Twitter doesn't seem to have done anything about that sector as well. So they have this entire platform that the policing, the enforcement of their own terms of service is completely arbitrary and capricious and selective, and how we even go about making it egalitarian and fair at this point, without just saying shut the whole damn thing down, I'm not sure. Ceding the floor.
Well, we've got about 8 minutes left in the live show. Patti, I'm curious. Do you have your archives anywhere?
My live stream archives or my Twitter?
Live stream.
So I have not my Twitter. The stuff I've just recently started live streaming on Twitter lately because I found I was getting a much better reach there. But as far as my Ustream archive, I believe that it is in two places, YouTube and I think Global Revolution. Someone has it somewhere.
Well, that's good.
We have.
Was there any?
We have some. GlobalRev has probably 80% of its archives, I think, of the stuff that went out over the last 7 years. I don't think we have everything in terms of live stream, but we do have a lot of it because all the editors kept their own copies, and we just have to collect them all and put them in one place. With Twitter stuff that you mentioned, we're putting Global Revolution TV stuff site back up right now, and it's going to have the archive of all our tweets. And we're probably going to launch a website. There's already a website launched, actually, for fakedemocracy.info. And we're going to be putting archives of all the banned people on there from the Twitter, I think.
Oh, right.
So actually, this is very important. This is a PSA. So if you have been banned by Twitter, I don't know if they're going to change this, but for now, you can still log into your account, go, and you can download all your Twitter data, and you're going to get this awesome zip file, and inside of it is a HTML file, and it opens up, and you basically have all your tweets, and you can put that on any website. So as soon as you get banned, or even before then, just do it just in case, go into your settings, and download your Twitter archive and just have it. Because if they do ban you, we're actually figuring, like right now, we're having a lot of conversations, technical conversations. All right, how do we do this? How do we go forward after Twitter banned us? A lot of people are still using Twitter. A lot of us don't want to use Twitter because we don't want to be in a position where we have to think about, what do I say? We don't think as a media company you can be in a platform where you have to self-censor to stay alive because it's going to affect what you say. So there's these open source tools like Mastodon and so on. So we want to figure out, how do we retweet from Twitter to Mastodon? So we're figuring out all of these technical issues, questions. But once we figure it out, I think we're going to relaunch at some other alternative place, probably Mastodon, for the Twitter stuff, related stuff, in order to continue our work, basically. Just we want to make sure we do it in a place where we're not censored. And in the meantime, everybody, download your archives because they're important. And I think we're going to be figuring out ways of how to, propagate them and use them going forward. And a lot of us have them, I think.
I downloaded my archive of whatever for my lawsuit. So I have some of it.
Well, yeah, everybody should download their archive because the Library of Congress did.
Again, wrapping up, things like how you port data between platforms automatically, and basically how you create these alternative publishing networks, preferably using, code that you control, like free software code. Again, like you can find a lot of tips, a lot of tools, a lot of the pieces that already exist. They've already really been programmed. You just have to fit them together like little pipes in the internet, right? IndieWeb.org, INDIEWEB.org. There's just a wealth of information in there, and I do think that's a great place to start. So I think going forward, a lot can be done with this, and I have confidence that it will start to make a difference.
Right on. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Hey, guys. This is Rob. Can I say one thing?
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, if we're wrapping up in a couple minutes. I just want to thank the NSA, FBI, and U.S. Homeland Security for tuning in. And we're not giving up.
I wanted to do that, too.
On behalf of Canada, I would like to thank CSIS and CSE and the RCMP.
I'd like to thank my friends at TVUH and various European and maybe African, for some reason, intelligence agencies. Maybe Mossad.
MIT, we know they listened.
Glenn, thank you for having us all on. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much for giving us
You're giving the voice to the voiceless.
the license to silence.
And I'm hoping to have us all on again.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when I was a noob. I remember when Occupy started. A lot of you people were involved with what I clued into then. And, here we are now. My pleasure.
Yeah,
I hope that at least somebody gets their shit back. I'll be honest with you, the way they're presenting it, I think as far as Twitter goes, you're all permabanned. They don't want to play with you no more, which sucks, but, get up your own sites. Your people will have a little more difficulty finding you. But when they find you, they'll stay. We know that. So thank you all for telling your stories and being on this show tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
All righty. If we have nothing else to say, then I'm going to wrap her up. 5.
I want to say one final thing. I want to say one final thing. If they're banning you, then you must be doing something right.
Agreed. Absolutely.
It's been great to be here. You have a good night, Glenn.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That's it. I'm ending the show. Thank you for listening. Good to be up here.